It annoys me more than it annoys anybody else, usually. I'm going to read from the middle of a short story that takes place in the middle of a series, the first book of which is coming out like this week. So, there's a world with like a giant ocean, and in the middle of the ocean, the mages built this island because they needed a safe place to train new mages. And the new mages can, like, if they're upset about something, they can accidentally cause all sorts of like earthquakes and tsunamis and all sorts of bad things. So they sort of keep themselves separate from the rest of the world, and then they act a little bit as international relations, facilitating communication between all the other countries. So this is set on this island, and there's one of the mages who teaches at this college is the first character we meet. So, Alistair was exhausted. His daughter, Rosalina, still wasn't sleeping through the night, and admissions exams at the Mage College took all his energy, even when he was fully rested. The first day, they had separated out most of the talents, the boys who had a natural ability for one or more of the magical disciplines, from the rest of the hopefuls. That had required extensive use of magically augmented sight to make sure no one was hurt. And then there were the fires to put out, both real and emotional, and imagined. Many of the hopefuls had some skill of craftsmanship that made them think they were talents, and they were easily offended when they weren't selected as talents. Not being a talent didn't mean they couldn't learn, it just meant that the magic part of their studies would be much more of a struggle. Talents, however, were always accepted because they were a danger to society if they couldn't learn to control their innate magical abilities. This afternoon, he watched as a room full of boys sat to write their essays. They were to describe why they wanted to become mages. Their quills were spelled so that the few boys who didn't know how to write could scribble across the page while thinking their essay, and the mages would be able to understand. Their thoughts would transfer as the mages held the page. It helped with language barriers also. Everyone learned in the common language of trade and commerce at the college, but not all of the hopefuls knew it before they arrived. He was watching for two things. First, and more likely, he was watching to see if any of the boys grew too restless to concentrate and focus on their essay. They were mostly adolescents, so he walked the rows of wood and iron desks and cast calming and focusing energy at those individuals who were showing signs of fidgeting and potential disruption. It was nearly time for supper, so he understood their desire to be done. The second thing he was watching for was any sign of the less noticeable talents, anything more internal, spiritual, or emotional. The talents whose natural strengths were more external were most likely to have been selected on the first day because they usually impacted the world around them more directly. Unfortunately, untrained talents, regardless of their discipline, were unpredictable. That was why this essay was such an important part of the admissions exams. Many of the talents would have had some odd and highly disturbing experience that related to their talent, which led them to come for the admission testing. They wanted to understand the implications of that experience regardless of whether their talent had manifested in any of the previous exams. It was quiet, dust filtering down through the golden light of the late afternoon. The only sounds were the ticking of the clock, the rustle of quills and paper, and Alistair's footsteps. He bit his lip, not hard enough to draw blood, but enough to keep his lip. He was looking forward to going home, spending an hour or so over dinner with his wife and daughter, and then sleeping. Tomorrow he had another long day, going over the results of all the examinations with the rest of the Mage Council to decide who would be accepted and who would not. But for now, he just had to endure the next 15 minutes without falling asleep. Riza sat at the nursery, rocking her daughter gently. She was trying to be brave, to be strong, but the tears slipped out anyway. She took a deep breath and wiped the tears away. She knew her time was coming. She had seen it in a vision weeks ago, and she wanted Rosalina to know that she loved her, that she believed in her, that she knew she would have the strength for what was to come, all of which she had seen in a vision years before she had given birth to her darling Rosalina. She started humming, then singing softly in Alar, her own language. She sang the Kaliran songs her people had sung to her when she was an infant herself. Now, she was the only one who remembered those songs, who understood the words. She had preserved some of them in writing so Rosalina would learn them, but she wouldn't understand the power the words had in the context of their rituals. It was a different kind of magic from what Alistair learned, studied, and taught here at the Mage College on this strange island, more city than nature, in the center of the ocean. She changed her song, singing a little stronger now as she remembered her homeland. The dusty heat, the strength of the sun, the warm orange and red of the canyon walls. The harsh, biting cold of the winter nights where the air was so crisp the stars glittered like fallen scales from an unearthly diamond dragon, the first dragon. She stopped singing, the pain of losing her own dragon, little black Chrissa, returning, sharply, suddenly. It had been a long time since she had allowed herself to feel Chrissa's loss so deeply. Still holding her daughter close, she stood and went to the window. She unlatched and pushed it open so she could breathe the outdoor air and see the sky. It was sunset, the colors of the fog mimicking the striations on the cliffs of Clear. She stood looking at the sky, remembering her black dragon who came to her too young. They were both too young, and that made their other girls jealous, many of the women too. In the end, though, that had saved them from the massacre. They had gone deep into the caves, higher up than was allowed. She hadn't told anyone that she could already fly, not wanting to exacerbate the others' resentment. So the soldiers didn't find them, didn't even know they existed. After the soldiers had finally gone, they had flown down together, twin shadows of black against the night sky, hoping against hope to find someone, something left. But there was nothing, no one, just ashes and death. Tired, they settled in another cave high in the canyon wall, where they could watch the fires from the soldiers' encampment. When she finally woke, she saw the eggs, dragon eggs, neatly tucked into the walls of the cave. So many, and none would hatch now. There wasn't anyone left for them to bond to. Amidst the bright fire reds and oranges, there were a few yellows and dusty browns. But one caught her eye. It was silver, brilliant and shiny. She took it. It was Rosalina's now. She had never told anyone what it was. The dragon eggs had always been their most closely guarded secret. Not even Alistair knew what it was. He thought it was just a guide stone. And in a way, it was. "Oh, Chrissa, soon our spirits will fly together on the night wind once again," she whispered. She began singing again, a lament full of regret for their lost time, both with her dragon who died too young and with her daughter who would grow up without her. The wooden floors creaked. A nuisance, but not one Lara hadn't encountered before. She took a small, careful steps, making sure to alter her rhythm so anyone in the house would think the noises merely the usual creaking and groaning common as houses continued to settle. Every morning, she performed an exercise routine to practice her breathing and balance for just such times as these, when she had to move so slowly that if anyone had been there to watch her, they wouldn't have known she was moving at all. She had crept in through the kitchen door behind the cook when she had brought in that afternoon's fresh fish for dinner. She disliked fish. It smelled. So she stayed as far away from the fishiness as she could, moving slowly from one shadow to the next through the kitchen. The cook and the servants who were helping never noticed her amidst their flurry of preparations and gossip. She took her time and arrived in the deserted entryway nearly half an hour after she first entered the kitchen. Slowly, she ghosted her way through each empty room. There was a parlor with fresh wood laid for an as yet unlit fire, the drapes drawn on the windows facing the street. Small porcelain figurines and lace decorated the polished surfaces of the perfectly arranged furniture. Not a single speck of dust marred the tableau, but this was clearly a room used for public visitors and not a place the family used regularly. So she wasn't surprised that her target wasn't there. She entered a former dining room, set informally for two. It was elegant and yet managed somehow not to be snobby or pretentious. If the table hadn't been set for two, Lara could have imagined a formal dinner with the Mage Council or a jovial family party. A vase of carefully arranged yellow roses stood in the center, but the target wasn't here either, so she continued her search. She tiptoed up another set of creaky stairs. Here, she found a study, disheveled, papers scattered over every surface, books stacked haphazardly next to the chairs, and another fire ready to burn. This must be where Master Sylvanus worked when he wasn't at the Mage College. Odd glass and silver gadgets filled the empty spaces on the shelves above the fireplace. Those gadgets, clearly designed for magic and possibly containing magic, made her uncomfortable. So she checked for her target and left as quickly as she could, without overlooking any possible hiding place. Across the hall was another parlor. This one was more comfortable looking, with a soft sofa and matching chairs, drapes open to the evening light. There was a frame with a half-started embroidery carelessly discarded on the cushions of the couch, and a silver rattle hid partway under one of the chairs. Someone had started a letter and left the quill on the paper, dry ink darkening the nib. This must be the room the family used most often, but nobody was here now. She sighed and started up more stairs, just as creaky as the others. She found a bedroom, neatly kept, everything in its right place. The curtains were drawn and the covers on the bed turned back, waiting for bedtime. There were 2 doors, one led to a closet and the other to a bathroom, complete with the latest advancements in plumbing. The target wasn't to be found anywhere. Lara started doubting her information. What if she had made the wrong assumptions and the target went out to meet Master Sylvanus at the Mage College to walk him home? Her reputation would be ruined. Only one room left. She entered, silent as the darkness creeping along the streets outside. It was a nursery. One window was wide open and a woman bent over a cradle, humming softly. The tune reminded Lara of something she had long ago forgotten. She was angry. Why was everything about this job reminding her of things she had intentionally forgotten long ago? Swiftly, purposefully, silently, she crossed the room. She grabbed the woman and held her still, her left arm wrapping around and pinning the target's arms tight. Her right hand pressed the sharp point of her silver dagger against the target's neck. The target didn't make any noise as the dagger sliced through the skin, covering the artery. Disconcerted, Lara demanded, "Before I take your life, tell me your last words."